Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Trading Brains. We are here today to talk about drumroll, please.
Oh, what? No.
Brewing. Yeah, we're talking about brewing today. Last episode we talked about some video games. This episode,
Mostly Destiny.
yeah, mostly Destiny. That was the main focus. But today we're gonna talk about brewing alcohol. And this is something that Angelo has been kind of, into
No,
in.
a little bit more than kind of. Just like I during my master, it all started like during my masters. Besides just drinking before in college and XYZ with that, just drinking different type of alcohol, see what kind of I like or what kind of drunk I get from different alcohol, which that's actually a real thing too.
Well, what do you
Uh,
mean? Like, do you get different types of drunkenness from different alcohols?
No, just like it's just like I feel like with beer I'm more chatty than like when I drink whiskey and whatever.
Okay.
Like gin, I'm more like not like lovey dovey, but like more like emotional. I think with tequila I just get batshit crazy. And I feel like tequila's with everyone. But
I can't handle gin, bro. I can't.
I like gin,
I,
especially with the new Ryan Reynolds wine called Aviation. Like the guy who played Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds, like he has
yeah, yeah.
gin a gin line, and it's really good. It's not as dry as like your normal gin, like Bombay or Sapphire or Tranquil or Tran. Um, but
Well,
but
I had London's dry gin once, and that was
yeah,
rough.
I'm not a big fan of dry. This is not dry at all for like your normal gin. But like actually, gin's actually like junipers berries. So that's why it had like that dryness to it. But basically it all started like my master's. I was in the graduate level class, and we had this undergrad lab that's the floor below us, and they were the couple undergrad kids was working with a brewing company because they had a side project and they were interested in. And I'm still salty that I didn't get it because just because the mentor had an in with the brewing company that he knew some people and he pulled some strings. And they would come to us because basically the main ingredient to make like whatever you try and ferment is yeast. So basically their main project was what gene that they could take out or replace or modify or anything like that. Basically making a new mutant strain of the yeast cells to one ferment faster or two um, improve the quality of the taste a or boost the flavors of that beer. Um, and that was the main project. So they will come to us maybe weekly, I will give or take, and ask us
So
for
they would.
advice or how to manipulate the yeast in order to ferment faster or slower or XYZ with that. Um, well, you have a question?
Yeah, kind of. So like when they ask you to give them different samples of the yeast, is that?
Not samples, more like pointers in the sense of like they use our equipment because we have better equipment than they did, but more like, hey, should I go with this? Like if they want to look at different kind of genes into it, I have to go on top of my like I can't go on top of my head, but like in the sense of A1C or like actually like YAP9, like they go after these genes like should I take out this one or this one, and I'll be like don't take out because that actually is the main function of the whole yeast, so you won't get anything. Like don't do that, please. Take away like some minor stuff that you could play with and easy manipulate. Don't try to remove the main function of the yeast instead of just do minor stuff and see where it goes. And so what they did is basically they made thousands, not thousands, but hundreds of strains
Wait,
of
so
different
they're
kind of,
splicing
not
the
splicing.
genes?
It's more like
Oh, sorry, not
it's
splicing. Yeah, it's just like removing
yeah,
certain
they're
pieces.
removing. Yeah, they're
Okay.
and then just making new transformations of
Right.
new DNA. It's just trying to see what changes.
And are
And
they making all of these different iterations at the same time? Like they'll be like, okay, for this one, moved this piece, and for
Yeah,
this batch we moved,
yeah.
whatever.
So basically, they try to test each different strain and see where it goes and what deletion, make note of it. Um, but yeah, and then so that's when I got really into brewing, and I was like, oh, okay, let's. How hard can it be? And like people make homemade wine just for the
Yeah,
family
my
or
uncle does in Arizona. He's got his own machine set up.
exactly, like I do it sometimes. We do it like once a year during the winter time. Um, then I've been dabbling more with beer. Like actually, I brew a couple of beers and more, and actually got into mead, which is like fermented honey.
Huh.
Um,
I
and
didn't.
yeah, so like going back, like people like a lot of people like um with alcohol, different type of alcohol, like wine is grape, of course, mead is honey, and then like beers, your barley, wheat, like you see Bud Light is just like three. It's like sugar, water, barley, and I said nothing else. But like
Yeah.
it's
What?
very your standard whatever. But if you that's American beer, but you go in Germany, they have a lot of like, purity laws that you can't have like a really really clear beer, or in the sense not even just that, just like you just can't add sugar to increase the alcohol content since sugar is cheaper. Like no, you have to add other stuff and make it more flavor. It has some sort of flavor to it. Um, then like going back, it's like wine, beer, right? We got that. But like hard ciders, like fermented apple juice, which I do like, but a lot of the brands use this too much sugar for my taste. Me,
Yeah, I
like
can
I
see
said,
too.
yeah, like woodchuck, I'm okay with that, but it's too much sugar. Gives my stomach ache. Sake, since you're in Japan, you like this fermented rice.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Juniper berries, that we talked about earlier. Brandy is actually distilled wine. So you ferment the grapes and then you go to another process of basically. So when you ferment wine, like from wine, like grapes, and you ferment grapes, it gets about like a 12 to 14%. And then when you distill it, it multiplies by, then you try to go from anywhere from 12 to 14 to 35 and 60% alcohol.
Is that because of the amount reducing, or what? Like, what happens
So
when you
basically, when you're
distill?
trying to distill, is you're separating like the alcohol, like the ethanol that you want from everything else.
Okay.
So that concentration gets more concentrated.
Right, right,
So
yeah.
that 10% goes to 30, and then you do it constantly until you
So
get what
where,
you want.
I mean, I understand that it goes from 10% to 30, but
Mm.
that alcohol, that ethanol that's being removed from the wine, how do they
So
reinsert that
when
alcohol into another beverage? Is what I'm
all
asking.
right, so basically, it's so when you have a still, you have to burn off the water and the methanol. Like so there's certain degrees that you want to go at. So like
Right.
water, like after 130 you're burning off water, and then you go a little bit above and a little bit above that. So I'm guessing, I think if I'm right, 155 to 170, in that range you're burning off everything, then you're getting what you want. So when the still, it's basically evaporation, right? You're burning everything off, so
Yeah.
it goes up to this channel, like basically a channel that's above, that connects all the evaporations and then condense after. So basically at the end, it's dripping just pure alcohol. Because it condenses as you go up, it evaporates. You have steam, right? You have water vapors.
Well, the water is evaporating, right? And
Yes,
then
but
going
like
up,
the
it
steam,
means
it's
condensed.
still steam, and then it condense and then mix it into the liquid. So from gas to liquid, and then the liquid is your ethanol.
Okay.
Okay. Whiskey is your grains, or like corn. Rum is your sugar canes,
Wait,
molasses.
whiskey's corn?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Um, Tequila is agave. Yeah, right. Mexican agua.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
I'm pronouncing it right. Okay, fine. I'm not
so.
butchering it. But like so like with rum, like you have your brown, like your like Captain Morgan spiced rum, right? Like it had like that brown tint to it, like molasses they use more. And then your white, they like it depends on what kind of sugar canes they use. Is sugar canes though, and like that white clear rum.
Mhm.
Um, Vodka, grains and potatoes. Um, Everclear is just a really heavy concentrated of that, and Everclear is about 95% alcohol or ABV.
That's a vodka.
That's vodka, yes, but they because it uses the same like grains, it's like grains of like vodka, but it's like heavier um than your normal vodka. And then abstinence, which is very illegal in like in the states, but
Yeah, absinthe is.
um basically what they use a lot of like herbs and leaves. And a lot of people don't say people there's not scientific evidence that says a hallucinogenics, but it gives you that psychedelic trip.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like so going with that, like normally I'm a whiskey kind of gin, but mostly whiskey and beer kind of guy. But like I do like to make uh mead from time to time. Like I made a called like Viking blood, and it's basically like cherries, wine, honey, and water, and then a champagne yeast. I use try to get that like 15% alcohol
So
content.
when
Mm.
you made this mead, right?
Yes,
Did you buy anything like pre-created, or you literally just had honey, you had cherries, and then
hmm
you just threw
I
it in?
had honey, water, cherries, sugar. Just want to add it just a little bit. Some videos say add raisins, so you add the tanners. I just added yeast nutrients to help the yeast to grow and actually ferment more of the cherries. And like when I use the cherries, it's not like I use like whole cherries, like they were frozen, and then I blended so like more the surface that yeast can go and actually take out all the sugar and ferment that. Um,
The sugar from the cherries.
yes, and also the sugar that I added
That
as well.
you added in. Yeah.
Um, what's it
And how?
called?
What's the name of the equipment like that you have?
So with the equipment, like basically, if you want to have like a starter kit of like to brew whatever you want. With beer, normally with beer, like you need a little bit more because you have to bring the wort, which is like the grain in the water, to a boil. So you have that whatever beer that you're looking for, pilsner, IPA, a lager, or ale, and the list goes on. But whatever you want to have, you want to boil, so you have that flavor coming out. Basically, it looks like kind of like watered down oatmeal in a sense before everything added. And then you have to chill it with a wort chiller to go from 100 and like basically boiling to 60 before you add the yeast. And then because if you add yeast to 140, the yeast will die. So you have to add it at some sort of temperature that it is sustainable. While like your mead, you could boil it if you really wanted to, but you don't have to. Basically, you could just throw everything into a fermenting bucket that has a little hole with a little airlock stopper. So the pressure from the fermentation can produce gas like CO2. So that can leave, but no bacteria can go in because when you ferment it, it's basically you're adding yeast. But now you got if you just keep it open, sometimes you have to be careful with being contaminated from other stuff
Right.
to ruin or like spoil the food because you're basically in the sense of like people who use this like in cucumbers they pickle like pickles they are that's basically like doesn't have any alcohol but it just has that sour taste to it. There's a couple like people will use like honey not honey yogurt actually to make like some other type of beer like a sour ale and all that stuff but um there's when I was looking for me like trying to look techniques and like how I on YouTube I do follow this guy called City Steadin Brews and it's like him sometimes his wife gets on and he shows you what equipment you need where you could buy them how to make it, and he'll tell you. And he goes step by step, and the videos go from anywhere from like 5 to I'm guessing about 40 minutes, and tells you what he does and how to do each step, because like you have to make the wort of whatever you are making. Let's just go with mead. We're talking about mead. So water, honey, and if you want to add any sort of fruits, or let's just say water, if you want to make a hydromel, which is basically water, honey, and that's it. And you can add sugar if you want, but the sugar is optional. And on top of that, of course, you need your yeast. Basically, you just throw in a sanitized fermented bucket. You mix it around really well. You put the lid. You put the airlock. And then you store it away for about 10 days. Get that the first initial everything. Then you depends on how you want to do it. Just a quick batch. Basically, so when the fermentation starts, about 1 or 2 days, because the yeast, depending on what strain it is, it's about 8 hours of the yeast will double. So, and then it will just constantly double until there's no more sugar left over.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
When you're making mead and you put it in the fermentation bucket, you said that you can continue to have it at high temperatures and the yeast will still survive?
No. So when you boil it, right? When you boil, like let's just say you put it in a stove and you're boiling the water, the wort, right? If it's at 140, you don't want to add the yeast to that. You want to add the yeast after, like when it's around 60.
Okay. And that's the same beers, right?
Yeah. So with what I'm just saying with mead, like you don't have to do the boil. You could leave it like just room temperature and you're good. Like you could just add room temperature water, like purified water, honey, and then your yeast.
Right, as long as it's purified.
Yeah, yes. What's it called? You could add tap, but like don't, because that's other stuff you're adding to it, and I'm not.
Yeah.
Purify is the best way to go.
Yeah, for sure. Boil
so you add it and you keep it into a spot that the light can go through. So like closet, whatever, in a closed confined space, or even like if you don't have that, put a blanket over it.
Wait, you want to put it somewhere where light can't get through?
Cannot, no. So like you don't want to get like, so like after, why I'm saying in the beginning you don't want it, because the yeast is being activated. It's light. It's really sensitive to light, so you don't want it to disturb anything. So you just want to keep it in a store, closed room, and like no light whatsoever. And then you like there's cardboards are actually is clear, and you let it be in, but you can still wrap it around, because a lot of people what they like seeing the activity, because like after a couple of days and week, actually like a couple of days mostly, you just start seeing this big, like it looks like a big war scene, like a battle scene that's going on in there. And you just see from the bottom going up and down, and just basically just chaos into that cardboard of basically the fermentation process right there. It's just basically
because the yeast is just eating all of the sugars and then reproducing and multiplying.
Yep. And then the CO2 is building up, it's coming up and all that stuff. So it's bringing everything up. So it goes all around.
The yeast is producing the CO2?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what is the CO2 used for?
So it's just, no, the CO2 is not like, it's not like carbonation wise. It's just more in the sense of like, that's that byproduct of it. Yeah. So when you have the airlock, right? So I add a little bit vodka to it. So because bacteria cannot go in, because the vodka is like a desanitizer. And
well, if you're airlocked, can't you not, like, isn't the bacteria
like there's an airlock stopper, like that's the stopper, so you have to add something. If not, it's just a plastic tube, that the one that I have.
Oh,
so I add a little bit of vodka to it, so it's light enough that the CO2 can come out, but but bacteria cannot go in. Or like, let's just say, like, depends on where you live, you want to put it in your garage and you have to worry, like sometimes, like when I was brewing my beers, like flies would try to get into it.
Oh, really?
But it would die in the vodka, because
they're trying to get at that alcohol, and
they were
trying to steal your drinks.
They were trying to get drunk, and they got drunk real quick and died.
They had too much of a good time.
They had too much of a good time. Um,
That's funny. So do you have to clean out that little pipe, like when
yeah, so
flies
like
die in it?
like so basically actually the most important part when you brew is actually sanitation, like cleaning your product. Whatever your beer or meat or whatever you are making, it's gonna touch miss your brewing spoon, your stove, your fermentation bucket needs to be sanitized. And I get like the food grade like sanitizers, and it's works like a wonder because it's like really really cheap, and I actually bought more than what I thought I would brew, and I have this and the stability in it, like it won't expire anytime soon.
All right.
Um, so I have a lot of it. So, but like basically, you
So
want to.
have you been actually making your own brews for how long? Like after college or
So
even?
after my masters, I brewed about 2 beers, and then this is gonna be my fourth batch of mead, which I've made wine. Well, they're just like wine, like with grapes before. Um, and that's like when I like help out my dad with all that stuff.
So you
Uh,
made wine. Oh, so your dad makes wine.
yeah.
He's made wine. Okay.
Mhm.
Cool.
Um, but like being like by myself about a couple like I basically I would consider myself as a novice, but like the research that I have done, like I love doing that research, just knowing what kind of stuff that people use and different kind of techniques.
Right. Doing the extensive research. Even that part's kind of fun too, because you
Yeah,
realize like there's so much to learn.
exactly. And you go to these micro brews and all the what they do, like that'll be awesome just to work there, just for a day and see not like the recipes, not trying to steal the recipes and whatever, just the process of dealing
Yeah, the
with
machinery.
higher volume
Hmm.
of that, not like these small batches that you make about like I think like my last 2 batches of beers I made about like close to 30 something bottles, which
30
is not
beers.
bad, but like it's a 30 pack,
Yeah.
which with me and my friends can finish in the night if you have like 4 friends, and that's
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was pretty cool. Like we did kind of like we had the recipe and we did mess up. But we
Me
wanted
as
to do
in.
me and myself and my friend Dom. Um, so we like it. We wanted a pilsner. It didn't turn out to be a pilsner, but it came to like a kind of like more like a red stripe, like island lager kind of esque to that because we kind of burned the bottom of the grains, and so it was like it didn't have that not clear, but like kind of light brown hue to it. It was more to like that amber color.
Mm.
But the beer was good. Like it was 5%. It was like 5.2, and the taste was good, and it wasn't like contaminated and whatever. It was just legitimate. We just messed up and just changed everything. But
Right.
like I said, it's something that it's a hobby as of right now.
Yeah, and it was trial and error, and I mean that's actually kind of fun, right? It's like you do it, you try it, and then like okay, it wasn't exactly as you planned, but you came
Exactly.
up with something else. So
Yeah.
at
So
least it
it's
was
like
at least it was drinkable.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was like after think about like a couple. I think like 3 months minimum we were waiting. So or no, 3 months in total.
So when you're brewing your own alcohol,
Mm.
no matter what it is, as long as you're not selling it, can you just consume it? Like, is it just you can just make it? Or
Like for the most part, like you could make beer, wine just at home. You don't sell it, yeah. Um, but if you're trying to distill, like make vodka and that becomes more of a hazard and whatever because with stills you're boiling it off. That the byproduct is not just ethanol, it's methanol, and methanol when you consume that, your body cannot break that down
hmm?
as well as like ethanol. So what will happen is if you drink too much of methanol, you actually could go blind because when it breaks down, it goes to an acid that goes to your like it targets blind, like make you blind.
Targets your
Um,
brain. Damn,
yeah.
it's crazy.
Um, So, um, so basically, like, there's like a bunch of like laws behind that. So, like, you could file a permit and make that you can make ethanol byproducts, or you can what's the other one? I think like biodiesel in a sense, and like that's actually ethanol. So you basically biofuel, and then you could use that license as well because kind of in the same category as that. But we don't advise that.
Of course not. Yeah, yeah. No
uh,
advising illegal activity. But all I was saying was like if you make your own beers at home or your alcohols at home, then you can consume it.
you could consume it if you want your friends to try it.
So
Yeah,
when you made those 30 packs, right?
yeah,
How did you distribute it to everybody? Like, did you actually package them in bottles, like
yeah.
glass
So like we
bottles, or
actually
did
get
you?
like we sanitize our bottles. And we made priming sugar, was basically like sugar, and you boil it and kind of make it into like a simple syrup in a sense.
Oh, okay, all right.
And basically you just pour it into like the beer, and then you just pour it into the like
The beer.
you siphon out to each bottle, and then we had a bottle cap clamper. We clamped it up together, and that's it. We had bottled beers.
Huh.
Um, Like legitimate, what it was is just like I think in the total of 3 months, it was like the first day was like heavy. It was like about like 8 hours to 12 hour process.
Damn.
Um,
So you did
and
this on a weekend or what?
we did it on like I think Friday night. So
Okay.
we started around actually a little shorter than 8 hours, like 6 hours. Because I got home around like 5:30. I think we didn't finish until like 11:30, 12 ish. Um,
That's really cool. I
so
would
we
I would
did
feel
that.
like I would love trying to do something like that with
Mhm.
you.
So when you come back, we'll figure that out. Um, So after that, then basically the whole waiting process. Then after that, when you're trying to like re-rack, so when you move from one fermentation bucket to another or a carboy or whatever, that takes about like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on how big is the batch that you are making.
Why do
Uh,
you move from one fermentation bucket to another?
so basically with beer or whatever, sometimes they have sediment that goes on the bottom. So when
Uh,
you transfer it, you don't want that sediment in your beer. So
okay.
what a lot of
Yeah.
people would do is they transfer it and then they let it sit into another one to either to take out the sediments or actually develop more flavor into a new bucket. Or if you want to add other stuff to it, that's what people would do. Um, and that would after you like transfer it to another bucket, that actually you could leave that for anywhere from a week, not even a week, like 2 weeks to a month and more. Like one, you
The
could
new
let
bucket?
it, yeah, to the new bucket, and you just let that like develop whatever flavors are gonna come out of it. So then sometimes with one, it gets cloudy. So I actually when I was making my hydro mill, um, I actually had to use this called Sparkaloid, and what it does is like after you when you add the powder, like you mix in boiled water and you kind of like pitch it and you add it to your wort or beer, mead, whatever you're making. What it does is um basically all the sediment of or like the cloudiness, it actually clumps it together and bring it all the way to the bottom. So that what you don't need any more of that.
Right.
Um, and that was a big help because like it depends if people are into their wine or whatever and they like being clear. I advise people actually do buy Sparkaloid and to make it more clearer and that you can see through
Well,
the
to avoid that cloudiness, you know.
yeah. But if you like the cloudiness, there's no harm in it. It's not like gonna kill you. It's just
Right.
aesthetics. I feel like, um, and I'm just trying to like I have basically a pound of it, but I had to use like a tablespoon, and that's it, or 2 tablespoons. Actually, 2 tablespoons, but that's it. And I still have a lot left over, but because I
Of the
know I'm
wine?
gonna. sparkaloid, like the stuff to
Oh, okay.
actually make it clearer.
Right, right.
Because I have in the future, I'm going to use that again. I
Okay.
know that.
You're gonna use
So
that for wine?
for wine, whatever I want to make that, whatever if I'm making beer or wine to make it clear, I'm going to use that.
Okay. Cool.
Um, Actually, I have a bucket. I have a fermentation bucket. And actually, I think I started that in
I'm gonna be
Memorial
honest.
Day weekend, May.
Like, if I, cause like I have a particular taste when it comes to beers, and listeners, you may crucify me, but I'm not a fan of IPAs. I'm not a fan of pilsners. Um, but I like, I like lagers. But
Okay.
what I love, Weisens.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I love Weizen. So if I could come up with like my own batch or like my own recipe for a Weizen, that would probably be like my holy grail of brewing.
Beer.
If I were to do brewing, yeah. So I definitely hope in the future we could make a Weizen. That'd be really cool. When you make mead,
Mm.
what is the consistency like? Because like when you said honey, I just thought of like thick, just kind of like hard to drink. No. So
No.
what? I mean, please
Kind of like
describe.
so like the viscosity of mead, it's like honey. Not like honey. Scratch that. I just said that. Uh, Wine. It's kind of like it's just basically honey wine. That's what it is.
Huh.
Um, it's kind of clear but it depends on how, because like honey is sweet, right?
Yeah.
So if you let the yeast go for a very long time, it takes out all the sweetness out of it, makes it into a um dry wine, honey wine, and then kind of like with the same thing as regular wine with grape wine. Um, but if you keep it like this, still you don't have to add any sugar to it if you don't want to, because honey is just naturally sweet.
Wait, so the
Uh,
beers are made out of grains, right?
yes,
Okay.
like
So the grains,
barley.
okay, barley, like rye,
Yes.
stuff
Hmm.
like that. Okay. So because that's not as sweet, it's has like
Yeah.
doesn't have the viscosity of
No,
wine.
because the viscosity is just like, how like, so viscosity is like, how molasses is very slow, it comes down and it's kind of
Yeah.
like hard to go. That's the viscosity that I'm telling you
Okay.
of that. But mostly like with beer, it's you get at like you have to. So with sugar, right? When you add sugar to beer, it's increasing the alcohol content because there's more energy source for the yeast to
To ferment.
yes, and then as well as but like with barley and grain, like there is like carbs in those stuff, but it's a complex sugar that they need to break that down to simple sugars and then use that, right? When you add just sugar to it, is just breaking down that sugar into alcohol to produce alcohol. With honey, it's already that the carbohydrate is not as dense as the complex form of the chemical compound is not as big as a barley or a grain or whatever. It's more simpler than that.
For the meat.
So yeah, so then the yeast can break that down way faster,
Hmm. So when
and it's sweeter too because they have more sugar too.
right. I mean, I know next to nothing
Mm.
for this episode, and of course you've been talking about the whole process, and I'm learning a lot. But the the yeast itself
Mm.
breaks down the sugars
Hmm.
inside the fermentation bucket, right?
Yes.
And from that produces CO2, which is a byproduct, but also produces the ethanol.
Yes.
Or okay,
Well,
uh,
the alcohol. We'll just say alcohol
whatever alcohol.
because yeah, because like so when you break down when you have to distill, right? So the whole point of distilling is basically making from your alcohol whatever the 12% to make it more, to make it like 30%, 60%, because they are removing the ethanol. Not ethanol. They're removing the
They're
methanol
separating the
because
ethanol from
yeah, from the
the other
rest.
parts. Okay,
Yes.
right. And
Um,
then, well, we already talked about that. Like the ethanol that gets put
mhm,
into a separate container, and then you add something else to it to increase the volume, or
mhm. Yeah, increase the volume or you take away the um So like when you put in the still and you're trying to take away the alcohol, like take away the methanol and water, is basically evaporation. So you don't need that.
Right.
But so when we're actually going, so like a lot of people when people are making batches or um actually it was pretty cool about this because I was actually like finding some stuff about it. It's that a lot of people, not a lot of people, but more in the sense of people can, when they brew their beers, can leave the lid open and kind of like whatever stuff that comes in. And if you keep it into like a well contained area, that like there's not much like fungus growing or whatever, like you could actually just put the yeast and let that grow by itself, and you will still have yeast out of it if it's in like a very clean, very hygienic area. And they call it like a farmhouse ale because they kept it open, and I think it's because they brew it in the farm. But like if you keep that farm area like not it's like disgusting and whatever, like you could
Yeah,
actually
sanitize it.
yeah, exactly. You don't need that like air, like the stopper and all that stuff. That's actually pretty cool about that.
That's interesting. Although I wouldn't trust like the dude down the road at like a
There's
company.
like I'm like 100% like, hey, this is like the best thing to do. I know a good chunk of it, but I could always learn more about it. But I just know people had done that method of making beers.
So when the yeast produces the alcohol, whatever type of
Yes.
alcohol it is,
Um,
do
I
you do you take that like all of that from the fermentation bucket and then put it into some other
it's
container?
already mixed. So like if you're talking about distilling, this is a whole new subject now.
I'm
You know
not
what I mean?
talking about
Like
distilling. I'm
yeah,
talking
so
about how you get from the yeast breaking down the sugars, producing the alcohol and the CO2, and then how does it get into however
patience.
way you distribute to like bottles or cans
So
or
so when you brew it, like when you make the wort, before you add the yeast, right? You boil. Let's just say we're talking about beer, right? So you boil whatever grain you're using and whatever hops that you are using to add the flavors,
okay.
right? Boil. You let that cool down. You add it. You have a wort chiller. So basically, it sends cold water. Like there's a copper tube that you put into your wort that's sanitized, but you basically shoot cold water into the copper tube that does not go into the wort, but it just basically drop the temperature way
Dropping the
quicker than normal, right? So basically you drop that down, then you add the yeast. So when people add the yeast, you pitch the yeast, which is basically you're trying to like so yeast when you buy in the packets, they're dry, right? So you add the packet into a sanitized cup and you add water to it so it kind of like rehydrates it and then you add it into your wort, right? So and then you let that so after that you close it, you seal it, put the stopper. Okay, now the waiting game starts. So you wait, let's just say 2 weeks, just standard 2 weeks.
because it needs 8 days to duplicate, right?
Doubling time for yeast about 8 hours.
Oh, 8 hours. Okay, my bad. Yeah.
Right? But it's 2 weeks. Basically, the first initial fermentation is happening.
Okay.
So then, when you add it to the so when you're racking it, so what will happen is that the yeast already did their part of taking all the sugar out and converting it into ethanol, or let's just say alcohol byproducts.
Right.
So that happens. All happens. We've transferred it over. All the sediments on down. So we basically what we want. It's the liquid part, right? So we take that out into another sanitized bucket, and then that is all depends on how long you could make that go for 6 months, 3 months, however you want that to develop. Something you can put into the fridge.
Continue to ferment it in
Yes,
a second bucket or a third bucket or however long you want to keep it
depending
going.
if you want to add more yeast, if you want to add more alcohol content, or if you want to add more like flavor. So like what people would do is like, oh, with this beer, let me add some like lemon yeast or orange yeast or XYZ, whatever they want to add, or more niche nutrients, or if the yeast, they don't think the yeast is like it's still fermentation, they add it just so go and they let it go and basically let it die off. So basically, whatever the leftover fermentation that they have left, let that die off completely, and that could be either another 2 more weeks or 3 more weeks to 6 months, depending on what you're brewing. And that's beer, wine, mead.
So
Sake.
when you're switching from the first or even the second to the third fermentation bucket, can you you're re-adding more yeast if you want? Can you also
You could,
add in more
yes,
sugars, or is
yes,
that okay? All right.
you can. So like with let's just say mead, right? So with mead, let's just say after the second time, you let's just say you taste it, right? And you check the alcohol content. Okay, you like the alcohol. Let's just say it's about 12. You like that, right? But it's too dry. You don't like how dry it is. You can add more sugar to it to make it a little bit more sweeter.
Okay.
And then you put that back, mix it really well, put it back, let that sit for at least a couple of weeks, and then take it out, taste it. Okay, I like this. Then you bottle it.
Right. Right. Well, you pretty much decide like when it's hit that point where like okay, this is good for shipping. So
Yeah.
when you hit
Or
that last fermentation bucket where you're just like okay, this is the right one.
mm,
Like do you just straight up drink that soup, right, of yeast and
so like with basically with you not be like so when it's cloudy or when it's like to that basically that last point what I'm trying to get at, it's basically all that yeast comes down to the bottom that you are not touching anything, that you are just basically drinking whatever alcohol beverage you are drinking.
okay, so you're not drinking the yeast, you're drinking whatever alcohol is produced by the yeast, and so you separate the alcohol from the yeast.
Yeah, like so like there's something like there's like yeast, right? Like it's bread, you still eat it, right? It's consumable. It's just like it's still there, like you can't see it though.
Okay.
Like the yeast is done.
So when
That
you pour out your beers, it's just
yeah.
like okay.
Mhm. Like at
I
that
was just
point when
wondering,
you're
like,
yeah,
if
when you're
I've been if
drinking
I've been
beer,
drinking yeast.
well, you've been eating yeast that but they're dead.
Yeah, I actually had bread this morning.
That's what I'm saying.
I
Or
I had some toast.
like pizza or whatever, like that's
Yeah. Okay.
um no, like so like
I wish
that's
I
like
knew about all this. I didn't know about this.
I really do enjoy it. When I have more time, or not more time, just basically the next time, like what I really want to brew, or if I want to make a new flavor of wine, or with the hydromill. Like the cool thing about like having a hydromill is you make your hydromill, so it's basically wine and honey, right? And then you could do whatever flavor you want. So like I made a 5 gallon batch that if I really want to do, I can make 5 different batches and with different kind of flavors. So if I really want, I can add one to just like match up some cherries and add that to flavor that. So it'll be like a hydromel with a flavor of cherry, or
Okay,
then
so you
mixed berry.
made one 5 gallon batch, and then you remove each gallon, like you split it up,
Yeah,
each
split it up and I
separate
flavor it
gallons.
however I want to,
Okay, right,
if I really want to, or I could just leave it as is, and that's it.
right, right. Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Um,
When you're brewing with other people, do you
yes.
ever like get into an argument about like the way you want to brew it, or what kind of flavor you want to give it, and
Yeah, when you have multiple heads to it, I want to do it this way, I want to do it that way. Well,
yeah,
if we get a recipe, it's well, the recipe says it this way. We should follow it this way. No, I want to try to do it this way. Well, okay, and then the argument can be like that, or it could be like, okay, we're doing this way. Are you good with this? Yes, yes. Okay, next.
so do you like say you have a disagreement when you compromise? Maybe perhaps you have like three. Say you have 3 gallons, right?
Hmm.
Um, and you say, okay, what, let's do half the way you want to do it and half the way I want to do it. 1.5 gallon way I want to brew it, 1.5 the way you want to brew it. I think it'd be cool to have like brew offs, you know, where like you have
Well, yeah, you go
make
to
your
like
own.
Brewfest. There's
Yeah.
like,
No, no, no. Well, I mean even like amongst friends, where like
oh, okay.
you make your own batch,
Mhm.
and you also have your friend make his own batch, and you could even make them together, right?
Yeah.
But like in the same location, and then bring over like I don't know, like 5 people or 10 people, maybe. I think you would want an odd number, right? Because you need to have a winner.
Whatever they can. Well, you could just have 3 judges that doesn't brew.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, so you just have people come over and drink, and you know what? Like whoever wins, everyone's still getting crunk. So
Yeah. Well, that brew off won't happen until a couple months after, when
yeah,
the the beer or whatever you're making is already done. Um, but yeah, no, like it's a great hobby if people want to get into it. Um, look up City Set in Brewing. I think that was the name called that I just said
well, I mean,
about the point of reference that I
we'll
use.
include it in the description in the YouTube video.
Yeah, no, just but I'm just in case City Set in Brews that I do follow when I want to do on the when I start making mead. It's just a point of reference, or if they want to buy it, or legit just go on Google and just search.
Do they
Uh,
have like lists of like equipment that they found works well, or
yeah,
okay, stuff like that?
but like also like the best the fun part is trying to find a recipe that you like.
Okay.
Maybe so you want to make your wheat beer, right? What you want to make?
Weizen.
Weizen. So if you want to make your Weizen, like how do I make a Weizen like recipe, like beer recipe, and then we go from there. Um, and it tells you step by step. Like sometimes it's really tricky. You can find a good recipe, and then sometimes like it's an easy recipe. And it's like 1, 2, 3, like 10 recipe, like 10 steps, and that's it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'd imagine that generally the more complex recipes have like an interesting taste to them. So
Yeah, like the first beer
that's
that I made was kind of like it's immediate because you added the fridge, so you the fridge, but you actually had it at a certain temperature, not at 4 degrees Celsius. It had to be a little bit higher than that, and it had to be constant. If not, it would have. So that was kind of tricky. Now it's a couple arguments there with that.
Mhm.
Um, then temperature and all that
So
stuff. When there's
you use Celsius?
well, Celsius, like some recipes only have it in Celsius. So like instead of just learn it, like do like every
Right.
calculations, just have everything in Celsius. So
So when you have like your equipment, thermometers and all that stuff, is that also reading
there,
in Celsius and
there's well they like I don't have like the digital ones. I have like the
oh, you
dial
like
ones. So
stick in it,
it's
right?
yeah. So it tells me both Celsius and Fahrenheit.
Oh, okay, okay.
Um. So but going on with that. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if I have not much to say about that. If people want to get into it, it's a great hobby. Um, there's you could go into down that rabbit hole for ages just because there's so much about
Yeah,
it.
because I'm sure you could explore so much about beer, but then you could also start dabbling into other alcohols.
Exactly, but it's not
I
even
was
just that. But like with beers, like there's so many different type of beers that you could make. Um, and then mead, and then wine, sake, and then if you want to go to distillery, that's another thing. But
I was listening to another podcast and they said, or one of their guests had said that they were brewing beers and so
mm,
were the hosts, but then one of them also said that they started getting into brandy and whiskey,
yeah,
and like it's different, but like still a lot of the
hmm
same elements, which is kind of
yeah,
makes it fun for them.
hmm
So I think that would be really cool too.
exactly. No, it's fun. It's really fun to get into.
Yeah.
If you have someone to go with it, by all means, I highly advise that.
Yeah.
Um,
Like I said though, again,
be above age, of course.
yes, of course,
Um,
above the age.
of whatever country you are listening, and if you want to try this, be above age.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, just that's basically it on my part. Like I don't know, just
All right,
um,
cool. No, I mean we covered a lot, and
um
if we might even be able to revisit this topic,
yeah,
because there's
um,
probably a lot more that can be covered, or
of
if people
course.
have comments about it and like they want to know something else about brewing that maybe we didn't talk about, we can. Yeah.
Yeah, just basically like leave us. like, subscribe us, Training Brains. Leave us a comment if you want us to revisit this idea again, and if you want to go in more in depth, let us know. We'll
Yeah.
try our best.
Even not comments. Like you have everybody knows our Twitter and our Instagram and
Yeah,
whatnot. So like just directly add us,
hmm
and we'll be able to respond and let
exactly.
you know if we can do another segment, and I'm sure we can.
No, yeah, pause. Absolutely. But thank you guys for listening.
Yeah.
Stay
Tuning in.
tuned for next week. Um, my buddy Evan Graves, myself, Angela Messina. We'll see you next week.
Yes, next week. And what is next week's topic, Angelo?
Next week is science. And basically just everything about anything and anything and everything about science,
Okay.
and just basically dabbling with whatever the neck of the wood that can go that rabbit hole that we could go into.
Yeah. Whenever something incredible happens, like that's my favorite word to use. Just science. Like that's it. That's the only explanation.
That's it. That's the
But
only viable
but
explanation.
I'm sure next week, we're gonna get into the nitty gritty and the details about
Yeah.
the why behind
hmm
what's happening. So
Exactly.
I'm excited. I'm glad you guys came out to listen to our show, and see you in the next episode.
Bye, friends.
Goodbye, everyone.